will be a methodological, critical presentation about how people try to research emotions. So the title is Expressions for Emotions and Inner Feelings in Kili-Vila, the language of the Tropical Islands in Papua New Guinea. Do you hear me with the mic? No? Well, then I have to take away this. It's much better. This one works. Okay, thank you. Much better? Better? Yeah. Okay. Well, let me start with a Gedankenexperiment. That is one of the nice German loanwords in English. It means a thought experiment. But you can say Gedankenexperiment. This was in the days when German philosophers still played a leading role in their discipline. Maybe these days are past, I don't know. Let's assume that Kawai was seen this morning in the vicinity of the bank where this happened, and she saw how the burglar ran away. Now, the police asks you, Kawai, to describe the possible eyewitnesses. How will you do this? Can you provide such a description easily, without any problem? Crime movies tell us it's very, very difficult for people who are eyewitnesses of a crime to describe the face of the criminal, or probably the guy who was with the criminal. And we all experience this difficulty if we try to describe the face of somebody, even if we are very, very familiar with her or him. Now, this holds for other domains of human perception too, like for example taste or smell. Now, why is it that language is good at describing certain states of affairs, for example, how to get to the cinema, but very limited in others, for example, with describing smells, tastes, or faces? Other possible explanations for that? Well, one of it is that these domains are modular and encapsulated. The relevant knowledge necessary for such descriptions is inaccessible for our languages, probably because these are phylogenetically very old, very, very old properties of our cognition. The expressions of emotions, smells, and tastes represent so highly subjective impressions that it is impossible for us to develop a Sprachspiel in the Wittgensteinian sense for them with precise and exact semantic rules. In the categories Cross-Language and Cognition project at the Max Planck Institute in Nijmegen, we tried to unravel this mystery by doing cross-linguistic and cross-cultural research on the topic. In this talk, I present first results on the expressions of emotions and inner feelings in Kili-Vila, and it is a descriptive and, in the sense of the social theory of the Frankfurt School, also a methodologically critical contribution. I will introduce my field research again. Some people who were there yesterday know these things again, but nevertheless I would like to repeat it. Here we have Queensland, the northernmost part of Australia, and we have the big island of New Guinea, which is divided into West Papua. In these days when I made the map, or my wife made the map, it was called Irian Jaya. And the other part, that is Papua New Guinea, and Papua New Guinea became independent in 1975, relatively early. The capital of Papua New Guinea is Port Moresby, and I can say Port Moresby has a very horrible fame. It's one of the most dangerous cities in the world, and believe me, it's true. And when I land in Port Moresby, I usually stay there for a week or so in order to make sure that I get all my gear clear of customs. I have lots of things with my technical devices to collect data, my solar panel, for example, my solar battery, and I always have a big box of medicine because there is no medicine at all available at the Tropical Islands, and therefore I have two titles on the Tropical Islands. One is Dokita Biga, the doctor of the language, and the other one is the Dokita Mokita, the true doctor. When I have my gear clear in Port Moresby, I fly over to Alotau, that is a place here, in Mirenbay, and this is the provincial government. There I visit the governor and to make sure that I make a good kotao to make sure that I get my research permits again in the following years. And from there, then I fly to the Trobriand Islands. That's another 1.5 hours flight from Alotau to the Trobriands, out of the Trobriands. And here are the islands. These are all the islands that belong to the Trobriand archipelago. Actually, Trobriand Islands are named after the first officer of Bougainville, who was looking for La Pérouse. That was a ship that was lost, and then he reached the Trobriand Islands in 791. And in these days, before it was the habit that you named the islands you found after crowned heads. Unfortunately, after 1789, there were hardly any crowned heads left in France. So he used the name of his first officer, Denis de Trobriand, and the traditional name of the Trobriand Islands was Boyoba. Here, close to Point Halo, there is an airstrip that the Americans built in the Second World War because they expected an invasion by the Japanese. I think they only saw 2 Japanese on the island, but they never came. And then I usually then go down to Losia. Losia is the government center for the Trobriand Islands. There I have a dinghy stored with a trader and my other gear that is necessary, like my outboard engine. I check whether this engine is working, look for passengers that come with me over to Kailiuna Island, and then I'm off for Kailiuna Island. And I took yesterday that is, if the weather is nice, which is rather rarely nice, with respect to the sea, it takes 45 minutes. If the weather is rough, and it's usually rough, it takes 1.5 hours. And my village of residence is Taurima. That is the northernmost village on Kailiuna Island. Okay, and the Trobriand Islanders belong to the ethnic group of the North Massing. They are yams gardeners doing slash and burn cultivation, excellent carvers, canoe builders, and great navigators. The society is matrilinear. That means a child in a family is not related to his or her father whatsoever. It's all in the matrilineal line. However, the residence, the rule of residence is local. That is, the family lives in the village of the father of the family. The language, Kilivila, is an Austronesian language, and more specifically, it's a West Melanesian Oceanic language belonging to the Papuan Tip cluster. It has a very free word order. The unmarked one is verb, object, subject, and it's an agglutinative language. And this is Taurima. Research on emotion and their facial expressions has a long tradition, from Duchenne and Darwin via Hortefeux to Ekman and Friese. I just want to come up with some claims that were made in that long tradition of research. Charles Darwin in 1872 came up with the following statement. The same state of mind is expressed throughout the world with remarkable uniformity. And Paul Ekman later echoed this somewhat with very provocative statements. He says there is a small set of universal basic emotions with universal facial expressions. Universal basic emotions, universal facial expressions. And then, regardless of the language, of whether the culture is industrialized or preliterate, facial expressions are labeled with the same emotion terms. That's strong stuff. We'll see whether he's right. Research on emotion has always been highly controversial. For example, there is the famous Russell-Ekman controversy of 1994, which is based on Russell's detailed psychological studies and the criticism of Ekman's claims that there is a set of basic emotions with universal facial expressions which are labeled with the same emotion terms from anthropologists like Rosaldo, Kuipers, and others, who claim that there are culture-specific concepts of emotion embedded in local ethno-psychologies. Our interest in emotion and emotion terms lies in their status as potential ineffables, that is, linguistic expressions in which access to their reference cannot be directly shared. That means ineffables. They are not easily expressed in language. I can point to a color and say blue, and thus learn the extension of blue. But there is no way to point to anger as opposed to its typical behavioral manifestations in the same way. Even if there is a clear set of basic internal states a la Ekman, it is unclear how the terms can be mapped onto them in an identical way by different first and second language learners. Our assumptions were the following. There are two principal ways, at least, in which the meanings of terms like anger might be extrapolated by a child learning language from concrete situations. Children extrapolate the meaning by noting the causal event and imagining what they would feel like. Or a child inspects facial expressions and either knows by virtue of Darwinian instinct, or whatever that may be, or infers by identification what the corresponding inner state was like. The leading questions in this research were the following. Is there evidence from language for a small set of universal basic emotions? How effable are they, or can we observe ineffability, the difficulty or impossibility of putting experiences into words within the domain of emotions? Do consultants agree with one another how they name emotions? Are facial expressions or situations better cues for labeling? And how well can people map situations to facial expressions? The questions we could answer on the basis of my descriptive research are the following three of these five, namely, how affable are they, or can we observe ineffability? Do consultants agree with one another how they name emotions? And are facial expressions or situation better cues for labeling? And these are the questions I will try to answer in this talk. In 2006 and in 2008, we did pilot studies in various field sites to get an overview over the lexical means speakers of our field languages use to refer to emotions and their expressions, and to explore what kind of methods would fit best in all our field sites to elicit the relevant data. For our pilot studies, we had two different kinds of stimuli. The first stimuli was the mind-reading emotions library developed by Simon Baron-Cohen and his co-workers in 2004, which is a set of film stimuli demonstrating standard emotions. And I hope now that I finally make it to bind them in correctly. Look, these are, well, you can tell me what kind of emotion is depicted in these two little clips that I show you. That is one that is not contextualized, and now there's another one which is contextualized, and I have to say something about that context in a minute. Maybe not the appropriate context for people who do not have to deal with mice, but with crocodiles and white pointer sharks and sea snakes or so. But nevertheless, we couldn't find anything better, so the Trobriand is accepted with a smile. So the mind-reading emotion library consists of, all in all, 412 enacted forms of emotions, which are grouped into 24 major groups. Each of the 412 emotions are represented by 6 actors. So this results in 2,472 movies. So they are all acted out by actors, by professional actors. And we use for our pilot studies the 20 big emotions of level 1 only, and these stimuli stage the following 20 emotion groups. According, the labels are Baron-Cohen's. Afraid, angry, bored, disgusted, excited, fond, happy, hurt, interested, kind, liked, sad, sneaky, sorry, sure, surprised, thinking and friendly, unsure and wanting. In this explorative study, I presented 3 film stimuli, one contextualized like the one we saw with the mouse, and 2 without context like the first one we saw, and asked 2 male informants of the age of 30 and 65 years the following questions. Awacha kudoki ala lunkola. What do you think she's feeling or he's feeling? Kugisi migila. Awacha kudoki migila amahala. Look at her or his face. What do you think it looks like? Awacha kudoki. Minana vivila kenantona tau buena kenagaga kenawacha. What do you think? Is this woman, this man good or bad or what? And the last one was Awacha kudoki minana antona bilivala. What do you think this woman, this man will say? The second stimulus, or set of stimuli we used, were the famous Ekman faces, a series of photographs. Ekman and his colleagues claim that these photographs or cards illustrate the 6 allegedly universal basic emotions, and these basic emotions are, according to him and his colleagues, happiness, surprise, fear, anger, sorrow, and disgust. And note, he claims that for all these emotions, people all over the world have similar expressions. The stimuli, the Ekman faces, consist of 3 series of 6 photographs each. The first series, which he labels P1 to P6, consists of 6 practice cards displaying the following photos by Ekman and Friesen. Disgust, happiness, surprise, anger, sadness, and fear. And you can check whether the photographs agree with what you think they express. Okay? Take your chance, go on. The second series, F1 to F6, consists of 6 experimental cards of a female face expressing exactly the same emotions: happiness, anger, fear, sadness, disgust, surprise. And the third series, which is called M1 to M6, consists of the following 6 experimental cards of a male face with expressing exactly the same 6 basic emotions. I don't repeat them now, just have a look and see whether they are convincing. Okay. Now I presented each stimulus to 10 consultants, 5 male and 5 female, ranging in age from 16 to 66 years of age, and asked them the following questions. First, Kugisi Migila, Awacha Kudoki Migila Machala. Look at her or his face. What do you think her or his face looks like? Awacha Kudoki Mtona Minana Alalunkula. What do you think about his or her feeling or emotion? And is there a word for this feeling? Here you have again a classifier, the general classifier we were talking yesterday about, kwe and one, and the one quetala is one biga, and so but one biga is one word. Now let's first look at the results for Baron Cohen's mind-reading emotions library and the pilot study we did there. I will illustrate it with the raw data collected, and the question and answers to the clips for being afraid were: what does she feel? A la Coppola, her fear. Second, how does her face look? Bivalan, she's going to cry. What kind of person is she? Vigla, buena, a good girl. What might she say? A Coppola, yes, I'm afraid. Okay, these were the raw data we gathered with these clips. I illustrate the results with the consultant's reaction to the afraid clips, the happy clips, and the surprised clips. First, the afraid situation and acting out of being afraid clips. We had the following expressions in Kilivila. Coppola, it's a noun and refers to fear. Coppola can also be a verb. I make these stripes because there can be a prefix which marks tense, aspect, mood, and person, and there could be a suffix, and the suffix would mark plural. So then we had a phrase like nanula imbao, That means she feels sad. Actually, in the literal translation, it reads as her mind is heavy. Then we had a verb, vinu, or the repetition of the verb, vinu vinu, is to look close to crying. We had a noun, valam, which is crying, and we had the verb, valam, to cry. So we can say that the Kilibila descriptions of these clips more or less agree with the MRIL stimulus description. Now, what about the happy situation? Sorry, I made a mistake there. It's 3, should be 2. Happy situation and acting out of being happy clips resulted in the following reactions of the consultants. In the noun muasaba, fun, love, surprise. Then muasaba ikaliseva, she is overjoyed with fun, that's a phrase. Then again with the noun mamwasila, having fun, to be in a good mood. With the verb wasau, to be happy. And with another verb, bomwasaba, to be very happy. But we also have the noun gibu gibu, which is sadness. Ekapinum alagabula, that's a phrase, she is angrily, she bites her or his chin. Yovai, she is eager or he is eager to fight, being eager to fight. And muao, with an adjective or an adverb, difficult or sad. Here we have to take into account, and as a result, that not all Kilibila descriptions of these clips agree with the MREL stimulus description. And finally, with respect to surprised, the situation and acting out of being surprised clips, we got the following reactions by the consultants. A phrase, lum cola buena, means feeling good. Another phrase, lum cola capitan, feeling clever. An adjective, kalinwana, happy. A verb, digila, to laugh. Adjective, digila, laughing. An adjective, yana, showing off. And another adjective, zeaverja, which also means showing off. And here we have to find out that the Kilibila descriptions of clips did not at all agree with the MREL stimulus description. Now, let's look at the result of all the clips we were running with the MREL pilot study. The Tropian Islanders' characterization of the clips for the 5 emotion groups, afraid, angry, sad, unfriendly, and thinking, overall agree with the MREL stimulus descriptions. The Tropian Islanders' characterizations of the clips for the 8 emotion groups, disgusted, kind, fond, sorry, hurt, happy, bored, and excited, come close to the MREL stimulus descriptions. The Tropiander's characterizations of the clips for the 2 emotion groups, sneaky and light, are more or less in the realm of the MREL stimulus descriptions. The Tropian Islanders' characterization of the clips for the 5 emotion groups, sure, surprised, unsure, wanting, and interested, hardly agree, or do not agree at all with the MREL stimulus descriptions. So, what is the take-home message from these results? The pilot study with a MREL elicitation tool reveals that the Tropian Islanders refer to 15 out of 20 basic emotional states in more or less the same way as speakers of English do. These emotional states include analogs to English: afraid, angry, sad, unfriendly, thinking, disgusted, kind, fond, sorry, hurt, happy, bored, excited, sneaky, and light. It remains completely unclear whether the Kilibila characterizations of the remaining 5 basic emotional states corresponded in any way to the English descriptions. These emotional states encompass the following: sure, surprised, unsure, wanting, and interested. Now, let's look at the results for the Ekman phases pilot study. I illustrate the results with the 10 consultants' reactions to the picture depiction depicting the emotions, the 3 emotions: fear, happiness, and surprise. So, the results for Ekman's phase is fear. For the photo P6, we have the Kilibila term eyo lokola, it leaps his stomach, it's a phrase. We have emeti kavati, he inspects something, it's a verb. We have the phrase ekilali matala, he opens his eyes, which is definitely true. Isibalutuva, he is frightened, a verb. Then the phrase Gaga Migila, his face is bad. Another phrase, Ala Kokola, is fear. Another phrase, Matala, Imitupunun Kuna Kuna, his eyes, he opens them angrily. And the word Ekalakela, he doesn't move a muscle. The fear response is for the photo F3. Again, Ala Kokola, the fear. Ikipuni Puni Matala, she stares angrily. Egibu Gibu Ala Gigisa, it is sad her side. Eyo Lopola, it leaves her stomach. Ala Lea, her anger. Gagabala, just bad. Kai Kai Vuvola, it's tired her body. And Imitu Puna Puna, she opens her eyes angrily. And the last one, photo M, we again have Kokola, to fear. Then Ala Kokola, his fear. Then Gala Magila, he doesn't want something. Nanula Mwao, his mind is sad. Eyo Lopola, it leaves his stomach. Gubuluva, to be furious. Velatavavadi Egisi, he saw one thing and wants to see. Velatavavadi Egisi Amagila Tuvela Begisi, he saw one thing and wants to see it again. And when. And here you see how many consultants came up with these reactions. So the results for Ekman phases for fear continued. The summary for P6, photograph P6, 5 consultants described the photo as fear. For the F3 photograph, 4 consultants described the photo as fear. And for the M4 photograph, 5 consultants described the photo as fear. In addition, 3 consultants described the photos with the phrases "it leaves her or his stomach," and this phrase can be used to refer both to joy and fear. So, the stimuli were also described as expressing anger, sadness, and other so-called basic emotions. Now let's come over to the results for Ekman's phases with respect to happiness. With photo P2, we have 3 reactions. One is Gigila, laughter to laugh. The other one is a noun, Tomwa Mwasila, a man in a good mood. And the last one is Mwasawa, fun, which can be closed as fun, love, surprise. Again, for the photo F1, we have Gigila, laughter to laugh. Namwa Mwasila, a woman in a good mood. Mwasawa, which can be closed as fun, love, surprise. Kalimwana, happy, and bueno, good. And for the last photo, M3, we have Gigila again, laughter to laugh, Mwasawa, fun, love, surprise, Tomwa Masila, man in good mood, and good, bueno. So, happiness, all consultants clearly perceive on all the photos as expressing something like happiness. They refer quite consistently to this emotion and characterize it with expressions that refer to laughing and laughter, fun, happiness, and being in a good mood. A point for Ekman. Now, the results for the Ekman's phase is surprise. We have the Kilibila term, the Kilibila phrase, Eyo Lopola, it leaves his stomach or his heart. Imito Puna Buina Matala, his eyes stare angrily. Isibalutuva, he is surprised, and Gaga, bad. For the photo F6, we have the Kilibila terms Buena, Eyo Lopola, it leaves her stomach. Magila Bisakesi, her wish she will give something. Mwamwasila, good mood. Mwao, sad, hard. Kubuluva, to be furious. Kokola, fear. Hesisu Babagi, Twemana Bueta, there is a beautiful thing, and she says A. Then the results for photo M1. We have Gubuluva, to be furious. Gagalea, bad, hot, anger. Buena, good. Zena Magila, he really wants something. Tobida Dem, an ugly man. Eyo Lopola, it leaves her stomach or her heart. Kai Vuvola, it is tired his body. Imito Buina Buina, he stares angrily. Evi Tukokola, he frightens somebody. Evalam, he cries. And Nina Mwao, his mind is sad. So, the results for Ekman's phase surprise continue. For P3, we have 4 consultants that describe the photo as surprise. For F6, we have 3 consultants that describe the photo as surprise. And for M1, we have 1 consultant who describes the photo as surprise. So the majority of consultants perceive phases as expressing anger, sadness, fear, and so on. Now, let's summarize the results of the Ekman's phases pilot study. The only emotion expressed in all the Ekman's phases stimuli, which was perceived by all consultants in the predicted way, was happiness. Now, 7 consultants perceived stimuli for the emotion sadness in the predicted way for stimulus P5, 9 for stimulus F4, and 7 for stimulus M2. That is 23 out of 30. Consultants also interpreted the stimuli, along other things, as expressions of anger. 5 consultants perceived the stimuli for the emotion fear in the predicted way for stimulus P6, 4 for stimulus F3, and 5 for stimulus M4, that is 14 out of 30. Consultants also interpreted the stimuli, among other things, as expressions of anger and sadness. 7 consultants perceived the stimuli for the emotion anger in the predicted way for the stimulus P4, 3 for the stimulus F2, and 1 for the stimulus M6, that is 11 out of 30. Consultants also interpreted the stimuli, among other things, as expressions of sadness, surprise, disgust, and happiness. 4 consultants perceived stimuli for the emotion surprise in the predicted way for stimulus P3, 3 for stimulus F6, and 1 for stimulus M1, that is 8 out of 30. Consultants also interpreted the stimuli, among other things, as expressions of anger, sadness, and fear. And 1 consultant perceived the stimulus F5 for the emotion disgust in the predicted way, that is 1 out of 30. Otherwise, the consultants interpreted these stimuli, among other things, as expressions of anger, happiness, and sadness. So far for the results of the second pilot study. On the basis of these results, I will now try to answer the 3 of the 5 leading questions of our research on emotions and their expressions. How affable are emotions, or can we observe ineffability, the difficulty or impossibility of putting experiences into words within the domain of emotion? Do consultants agree with one another how they name emotions, and are facial expressions or situations better cues for labeling? Now, how affable are emotions, or can we observe ineffability? I expected, on the basis of my knowledge of Kili-Vila, that the consultants would use the expression skubuluva, that can be used as an adjective, a verb, or a noun, or lea, to refer to anger. Lea is a noun. The verb peki and the noun minena to refer to disgust. The noun or the verb kokola to refer to fear. The nouns kalimwana and mwasawa to refer to happiness. The noun tutangwao and gibu, also noun, and the phrase nanula ingwao to refer to sadness, and the noun yahaula and the phrase itutu nanula to refer to surprise. However, Kili-Vila has many more different verbal means to refer to the expressions of emotions. Thus, with respect to the language of the Tropic Islanders, emotions are a domain where we cannot observe ineffability. On the contrary, Kili-Vila has a rich inventory of terms that consists of nouns, verbs, adjectives, and idiomatic phrases and expressions to precisely refer to and to differentiate emotions and inner feelings. Second, do consultants agree with one another how they name emotions? Now, the broad inventory of verbal means to refer to emotions has of course consequences for the consultant's consistency in their responses to the stimuli, and thus for the codability of emotions. In their responses to the Ekman phases stimuli, all consultants agreed in naming the facial expression of happiness in the predicted way, and the majority of the consultants agreed in naming the facial expression of sadness in the predicted way. But there is hardly any consistency in my consultants' naming of the other 4 facial expressions that are claimed to be universal. The rank order of the other basic emotions that were perceived by my consultants is the following, and you see the numbers below the names for the emotions indicate the number of consultants who perceive the 3 Ekman phases stimuli in the predicted way. So we have happiness, which was recognized by all informs with all 3 stimuli. Then we have sadness, which also got 7, 9, and 7. correct reactions. Now, fear is 545. Anger is 031. Surprise is 431. And disgust is hopeless with just one reaction that does not really come close to the hypothesis, to verify Ekman's hypothesis. And note, some consultants also interpreted stimuli for sadness as anger. They interpreted stimuli for fear as anger and sadness. They interpreted stimuli for anger as sadness, surprise, disgust, and even happiness. And they interpreted stimuli for surprise as anger, sadness, and fear, and stimuli for disgust as anger, happiness, and sadness. Thus, the results of this pilot study very clearly falsify Ekman's claims, and I think in a very impressive way. Actually, Ekman hasn't responded to the results. It was published a few years ago. However, the results of the pilot study, which I conducted with just 2 consultants using the mind-reading emotions library, stimuli revealed that my consultants referred to 15 out of 20 basic emotional states in more or less the same way as speakers of English do, namely to the stimuli that were labeled by Baron Cohen and his colleagues as afraid, angry, sad, unfriendly, thinking, disgusted, kind, fond, sorry, hurt, happy, bored, excited, sneaky, and like. Now, this observation, anecdotal as it may be, because it's only based on the reaction of 2 consultants, has consequences for asking the last question I posed in this talk. Are facial expressions or situations better cues for labeling? Well, Baron Cohen says the following about that. Emotions are states of mind that arise as a result of specific experience and drive us to take action. Although emotions exist in the mind and so are essentially unobservable, they are frequently revealed through facial expressions, voice, posture, and gesture. So, what should we take from this quote? Emotions, and this has been known in circles of human ethologists for a long time, emotions are not just displayed with facial expressions, and we should also all know that if we have an unbiased approach towards emotions. On the contrary, the expressions of emotions and inner feelings is done in complex behavior patterns, and ethologists refer to these forms of behavior, which control and regulate not only facial expressions, but also posture and position of the body, muscular tonus, gesture, speech utterances, voice, pitch, personal distance between interactants, eye contact or the avoidance of eye contact, skin temperature, pulse rate, and many, many more behavioral features. Even if we accept Ekman's claim that there is a set of basic emotions, these basic emotions are expressed not just in the face, but in much more complex interaction and behavior patterns. Therefore, photographs of static facial expressions seem to be a rather inadequate means to elicit terms for the emotions claimed to be expressed by these frozen facial expressions. My Ekman's Faces pilot study has proven the inadequacy of this elicitation tool. They also refute Ekman's claim that regardless of the language or whether the culture is industrialized or pre-literal, facial expressions are labeled with the same emotion terms. This is clearly not the case. It's absolutely wrong in that way. Film clips, like the mind-reading emotions library clips, especially those clips where emotions are enacted within a brief context, thus being contextualized in an instance of a specific form of social interaction, are a much more adequate tool to do research in the language of emotions. But the emotion clips of the MREL are also staged by professional actors, so they are not the real thing, but a kind of fictive emotion. Now, the best way to falsify or verify universal claims a la Ekman would be to gather film documents of how members of various cultures express emotions in everyday interactions. That was my first thought. But again, this has problems. I tried, for example, to elicit the expression of certain emotions by some consultants from programs. So you see fear, happiness, sadness, disgust, and anger here. And of course, it shouldn't be these photographs, because then I would make exactly the same mistake. It should be films. You should see how they behave. You should see them in action. You should see how they enact that kind of emotion. Okay. However, if we do that, and if we even get these beautiful enactions by people with whom we work, we have to answer the question how the persons expressing these emotions and their interactions would classify and label what they were doing, and whether or not other members of this subculture would validate their classification and their choice of an emotion. Moreover, we have to find out what people really do when they claim that they refer to emotions. Do they specify an emotion, or rather the cause or the causes of a felt or sensed inner state? Or do they refer to a learned cultural concept that is said to be adequate in a given described situation? Thus, we are faced with severe methodological problems, if not dilemmata. We have to overcome them in some way or another if we really want to do more adequate research on the expression of and the reference to emotion in various languages and cultures than the research that has been done so far. And I really would like to say, don't do it the Ekman way. Thank you very much.
So we are now open for questions. I will ask the first question, sorry.
Okay.
So when it comes, so according to your own research, do you believe that we have basic emotions? I mean, independent of language? That is the first question.
I think we as human beings feel a whole lot and a big variety of emotions. Who am I who can decide this is a basic emotion and this is not such a basic emotion? It's a feeling of a person, and the feeling of a person can be so existential that people commit suicide. Why? I simply can't say because of the basic emotion of fear or sadness or whatever. They may have completely different means. I cannot find a way of classifying and categorizing emotions according to more basic and according to less basic emotions. Emotions are emotions, and they drive all our behavior in various and sometimes absolutely irrational ways. But they are there, and sometimes we can control them, as you will see on Thursday, and sometimes we can't. So I wouldn't dare to say these are basic emotions. They are emotions among other emotions.
Yeah, for cognitive psychologists or for psychologists in general, they're interested in knowing whether there are basic emotions independent from language. But when it comes to language, then it would be much more difficult to determine basic emotions in language. What do you think?
I just want to come back to you. Say psychologists say they have basic emotions. How do they define a basic emotion? I haven't seen any sound definition of what they mean when they refer to basic emotions. Does basic emotion mean they claim that these emotions are universal? I think all our emotions are universal. They are expressed in different ways. But we are human beings. We have the same apparatus. So our emotions are the same, aren't they?
Calm, I'm calm. I'm calm, totally.
Yeah, and therefore I can't answer the second answer. If I don't know what a psychologist understands with a basic emotion, then I can't come up with a question to what do linguists think basic emotion is. I think it's a hypothetical phrase without any kind of definition and explanation. I hope I haven't shocked you.
No, not at all. I mean, when it comes to language, the issue is much, much more complicated. And do you think it's possible to do linguistic typology on emotion?
Yeah, you find. But what you can do is what I have tried to do in that paper and with the appendix in the paper. I've listed, first of all the emotion expressions that people gave me during these elicitation devices with the two stimuli. But then I looked at my whole lexicon and gave all the emotional terms that I have collected and I have found. And these, as I said, these emotional terms are not just adjectives or nouns or whatever, because Ekman and Friesen insinuate it's all nouns. It's not nouns at all. The nouns are in the minority, at least in Kidivila. We have very complex, very culture-specific ways of referring to certain emotions, like itutu nanobu. It hammers my head. That means I'm terribly astonished. So you have to know why it hammers your head. Someone who is confronted with that expression for the first time, without any kind of context, will say, who's hammering on your head? What is hammering on your head? These are things that you have to collect, that you have to gloss, and that you have to sometimes contextualize in order to make it understood. And this is the work of a good lexicographer. And we do not need more than being a good lexicographer, which is actually something that is very difficult to achieve. I don't think that I'm a good lexicographer. But if you are a lexicographer, you have reached the answer to your question, what can we do? We just can describe them, the expressions for emotions, as complete as possible. And then we also must be aware of the fact that these collections just describe a tiny excerpt with respect to the time in which language has been used. Because emotion terms can very quickly change. For example, we have in Germany a word that the younger generation uses without any problems, where I still get a bit shocked when I hear it. Exactly. Geil. Geil has its meaning from Middle High German, and it means sexually aroused. In the course of the last, I think 20 years or so, it suddenly lost that connotation at all, and geil was, this is a geil new mobile. Let me have a look at this geil device. There's no sexual arousal, I hope at least, no? But this shows how a society suddenly may change its language and its language use, and also may change the semantics of these words. And there is no wonder that people like me who belong to an older generation, we blushed when we heard geil, when we were 15 or 16. Huh? But this has absolutely changed.
So it's possible to do linguistic typology on emotion, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we can do it. So, any questions? So compared to nominal classification and conceptualization of space, emotion is really difficult to work on.
Yeah. Can you give her the mic? Kawai, can you give her the mic?
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you. So if we extract the linguistic information, do you think we have some kind of basic knowledge on speech utterances, voice pitch, or pulse rate that can capture the emotion state?
Yeah, that is done in ethological research institutes, where they really look, and psychological research institutes, where they really confront people with certain situations and measure these things. And the interesting thing is that the new ways of playing around with virtual realities have given you an enormous amount of possibilities to, for example, elicit a behavior of fear. Just imagine that you are in a virtual reality room and you are in the mountains, and suddenly you have to go over a small plank to the next mountain, and you see down all these things and you suddenly get instable. So these things are done, and they have to be measured, and once all these things have been measured, they can be compared. But we are just at the beginning of these kind of research activities. Okay?
Thank you very much for your very insightful talk. I'm very interested in the emotion of jealousy, and I would like to know in your field work, how do those tri-brand islanders express this emotion? Thank you very much.
Please come on Thursday. Then I will exactly talk about jealousy on the tropical islands as one of the experiences that I observed, and it was quite clear that this guy was jealous. I can give you a quick plot without giving too much away for the Thursday lecture. The tropical islanders have a marvelous harvest festival, and in these harvest festivals the norms and sexual regulations are looking not as strict as they look in everyday situations for people that are not married. So bachelors on the tropical islands have a lot of sexual freedom anyhow, but when one of the most important taboos for this kind of sexual freedom is you can do whatever you like as a young man or a young woman, as long as you are not jealous. So, especially if you are experiencing during these harvest rituals, when people assume that the spirits of the dead are there and watching you, and they check whether you behave properly or not, and if you don't behave properly, they can severely punish you. Then you see there was a young man, it was clear, he was very much in love for a long time, already 4, 6, 8 weeks, with another girl, and one of the one guy of the neighboring village visited our village, and all of them, boys and girls, were dressed to kill. And suddenly he saw that his girlfriend took a betel nut from that boy, and then they went to the beach. And he was there at one of these big dance houses, wringing his hands there. And he knew he would go to the beach and kill that guy, but of course he couldn't, because he had to behave. He knew the spirits of the dead were there. So this is a way of how they handle jealousy, and I will talk about that on Thursday. So it's a teaser. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. I'm very curious about, you just said that all our emotions are universal, just expressed in different ways. So I wonder if you mean when someone is placed in that situation, then they will feel that. And if that's the case, then I wonder if other background information or background history play any role. For example, if in your culture, maybe you will feel certain emotions, but you're not in that culture. Even if you're placed in that situation, you won't feel that.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah. I think that is something that is absolutely idiosyncratic. We have a beautiful fairy tale in German by the brothers Grimm, from one guy who went out to learn what fear is. And he's not fear at all. He went to a place that is haunted, and he comes together with some skeletons, and he said, "Oh, that's nice, I can play what is it called, bowl," and he takes the heads and plays with them. So he doesn't feel fear, and this may very well be there are people who don't feel fear, and it's an idiosyncratic way of how you react to certain situations. And I can't even describe that for my own reactions. For example, I just told you a few minutes ago that Port Moresby is one of the most dangerous cities in Papua New Guinea. In 2008, on my last day before I left Papua New Guinea, I wanted to go to the museum of Papua New Guinea, which is at the vicinity of the city, at the outside of the city, and it takes you about 300 meters to cover the distance from the parking lot to the entrance of the museum. In former days, it was never a problem for me, but as you may have realized, I have some problems with my knees, so I knew I wouldn't be able to run as fast as I could as a young man. And just before I wanted to fork off to the parking lot of the museum, I had a very strong gut feeling which told me, don't do it. And I followed it. I can't say why. I really have no idea why I did that. But I followed it and I think it was a good thing to do. So, what is the rationale behind that kind of behavior? I don't know. I really don't know. But sometimes we come up with decisions that may be important for our existence, or maybe not important because they were trivial. Maybe I just had too much fear. And there is reason to fear. In Port Moresby, one of the worst things I ever experienced was that a guy on the other side of the street was killed by having an axe on his head. I heard that sound for 5 or 6 years. Okay, maybe not so dramatic questions. Yeah.
From the data you provided, I saw there's a lot of usage of buena and gaga, which means bad and good, across different kinds of emotions. I wonder, is there an explanation of why people use a lot of buena and gaga to express their emotion? I mean, for example, when they're expressing the emotional fear, they also use buena, which means good.
That depends on what they think at that moment about the fear. Fear can also be a good thing, because well, look, if you decide to get out with your canoe to go over to the next island, which is about 12 kilometers, but still inside, and you see that the dark clouds come, and you see that the wind gets stronger. You may say, "Oh, no, it's good that that I have some fear. I better stay home." That would be actually an experience I get from the program. I got from the program.
Okay, so it's totally different thinking from
Well, it's a context-dependent thinking, and all kinds of words, even words like good and bad, get their meaning in a certain context. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Senft, for this very interesting talk. I have a kind of a follow-up question about good and bad. So, the idea that we should use reason to control emotions plays a crucial role in many modern societies, you could argue. So, what is there a distinction between reason and emotion?
Between reason
and emotion, and is there this idea that we in many situations need to control our emotions?
Yeah, I think so very much. And again, this is something that I will topicalize in the next lecture, which is much more anthropological linguistic. This year was, as I said, it was just a methodological, critical thing. The real thing, what kind of role emotions may play on the Tropical Islands, is something that I will talk about on Thursday. And there you see that the control of emotions is sometimes absolutely existential for the existence of a whole village. Because if someone would get lost, and I experienced one case, and we'll talk about that case as well, is so provoked, feels so provoked that he would like to kill someone. If he really would have done this, the village would have been non-existent, basically. Because in these villages there are so many interrelationships between the inhabitants of the village that even one destruction of such a relationship would endanger the whole community. And you have to also keep in mind, I think you have seen my picture, wait a minute, just go back to it, of Taurema. Okay, good. Just imagine that you have to live in these houses, the walls of which consist of woven leaves from coconut trees. That's your wall. And that wall marks your privacy. Of course, you hear everything. And even youngsters, young children have to learn that they have to overhear some things. There are lots, by the way, there are lots and lots of words for peeping toms. That's a different story. But children have to learn to be tactful. And it's an extremely important characterization of cultures like the one of the Trobriand Islanders, that they can only manage to survive if people know that they have to be tactful, not to notice everything, not to come up and discuss everything, but to take things as a given, and to not notice things despite the fact that they will gossip about everything. But this is done in a different way, of course. It's not something that is made public. So, you have to, as I said, you have to learn at a relatively early age that the whole society can only continue existing if you think that certain patterns and norms are everyday patterns and norms that everybody follows. And if you, for example, children, that is something that you really learn with children. If children come up with nasty comments on certain adults, the adults can really have a kind of admonitory speech publicly in the evening, and then this child will have a very, very difficult time. They are not anti-authoritarian, the Trobriand Islanders, not at all. They very rarely punish or beat up children. But if they do it, then there is a big, big reason. And that is the only thing that I ever experienced when a child was really punished. Not just a slap on the paw or a slap on the back head, but when they really got a fast beating, when they did something that was absolutely nasty. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So maybe before further questions from our audience, I would like to express my emotion of happiness. Yeah, with regard to some of the results that you gained from your pilot study is about the fear emotion. I'm doing a comparison, a cross-linguistic comparison of the expression of fear in Chinese and Russian. And I have, and actually our team have a very difficult time to make a comparable basis, to come up with a comparable basis to make comparison across these two typologically different languages. And your pilot study result appears to support our difficulty because fear is your informants or your consultants were not very consistent in expressing fear in your pilot study. And that's the same thing for our observation of the Russian and the Chinese data. with regards to the expression of a fear in different situations represented by different sentences in different situations. So, do I look happy? Yeah. Satisfied?
Almost always.
Yeah. Okay. So, more questions?
Wait.
I go back a little to that Gaga question. Can Gaga serve as a degree modifier? Like in English, terribly awesome. Terribly good.
Then you can say cena buena, cena buenigaga.
Okay, what does that mean?
Cena buena is good, and
Yes.
bueni is then compounded with gaga. Buenigaga. That
Gaga is
is
a
terribly
different
good.
Oh yeah.
You have the same thing.
Okay.
Buena, buena, buenigaga.
So if we want to try to learn this language,
Yeah.
it's quite
Do you agree that if we want to learn this language, the statement that if you want to learn this language, the basic two words are some, the words that you acquire or need to learn first is buena gaga easier to come for communication because it can represent a lot of things in this language for the presentation you were done the previous 2 days. Yeah. So do you agree that? Yeah.
Well, you first of all have to learn the words, of course. But sorry.
but if I think
Maybe I can survive a little bit,
Yeah.
if I go there and, with these two words,
Yeah.
buena and gaga. Yeah.
Well, it may help you for the first time, and then people would say, this guy, Senna Turbahasa, he's gaga. What you have to do if you really want to learn the language, you have to make sure that at a certain point of your language acquisition, you have achieved to be almost on common ground with the people. That means you have to know about the norms, the rules, the regulations of language use. That was one of the things that I did when I came to the Philippines. I made sure that every day I learned 10 new words. And it takes some time, even names. And names are very important because they all know your name and they all expect that you address them with their name. So with 240 names to learn, it's a bit more difficult than with one name to learn. But nevertheless, they expected that. So it takes some time to learn a name like Luluwasibeguyao or Wapalaguyao or these things. You just have to even attune your speech tools to the consonant-vowel syllable. Then you have to learn all the words, then you have to learn the syntax and the morphology. But that is not the important thing. The important thing is to know how to use language in certain situations. When I thought I was already quite far in my language acquisition after about one year and months or so, about 13 months, I was once sitting in my house and people suddenly started to call me names, to scold me, and I shrank together. What have I done wrong again? Because that is one of the other things. If you are in such a society and if you learn the language, you have to know, you will behave as a bull in a china shop. You will do all the most stupid things that you can think of. And the only thing that gets you out of it is if you have the guts to laugh about yourself. And I may have said something wrong, which I was not aware of. So that was the reason for scolding me. And when they realized that I was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, they said, "Oh, Gunter, forget it. You have to learn quite a lot. You do still not know what the concept of sopa is." What they would have expected from me was to react with counter duels, a verbal duel. What will you bloody hell guy tell me what I should think? Something like this. And you can say everything as long as you don't mark it as super. And that was something where I realized, yeah, no, I'm far from being on the common ground level. That was something that took me quite a long time to really learn, but I think that is what it really means to do anthropological linguistics. You have to be as close to be on common ground as possible, because otherwise you do not understand what's going on. Any more questions?
Any more questions?
Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for your speech. I have a small question about. We talked earlier about the events that elicit emotions may be socially contextualized.
Yeah.
But if it's possible for a person who themselves do not experience such emotions because of some specific events, but combined with the expressions or body statures or anything observed by the person, and if a person has the ability to communicate this kind of emotion, is it possible for these people to recognize this kind of emotion in other people in this specific event?
I have no idea. To be absolutely honest, I have no idea. I think it's one of these dilemmata that I refer to at the very end of my talk. That when we try to find means to elicit emotions or means to elicit references to emotions, what are we doing? Do we really know when we come up? What I'm not even too sure when I present you my data with these two stimuli, what actually was going on. I know that some people probably had difficulties in really being confronted with one-dimensional photographs. Maybe it was a problem for them to come up with the right emotion words because it was not three-dimensional as they usually perceive things. It may be an artifact of the stimulus. It may also be an artifact of the stimulus if I confront them with a film, because many of these people never ever had seen films. The first films they saw were films I showed them of their own harvest rituals, for example. So there are lots and lots of pitfalls in that kind of research. And I think the only thing that helps if we tackle that terribly interesting topic of emotions is that we are, or at least we try to be always absolutely aware of what we try to do and where the flaws of the methods are. I think that's probably why I'm so allergic against Ekman and reason. I think that has come over. They make these claims in that absolutely American colonial way, like Chomsky, let's take any language, say English. That's not true. The world is not English, the world is not America. The world is a big variety of all kinds of people with different ideas and different experiences and different forms, and they existed longer than America. America has a history, white America has a history of about 250 years by now, and the others who had a history have been killed. So we have to see that all the things that we try to say in a very generalizing way have to be backed up by excellent empirical data. And if they are not, this is just fake. I think Ekman is a fake. And Ekman is an absolutely dangerous fake. because he now tries to sell his unmasking the face idea to custom officers at the borders of the states. And he claims that with automatic face recognition, he can find out that this guy has something dangerous. So better look at this guy. And this is racist for me, and it's close to fascism. And therefore, I'm so engaged in that kind of research, because it's so dangerous. You can do whatever you like with it if you do the wrong thing. Sorry, that was my teacher's view. My wife always said I shouldn't use it, but I wanted to be a teacher when I started my studies. So forget about it. Cut it out.
Yeah. No, we'll keep it forever.
Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. My question is about, methodologically speaking, how this embeddedness do you think can we do cross-cultural comparison of emotion? Because I was trained in anthropology, so a kind of comparative comparison is we presume there is a category called happiness, and we study different cultural expressions of happiness. But when we go back, after listening to your talk, when we go back to this basic abstraction of this category, and we found so much diverse varieties or happiness experiences in this category. So if they going back embeddedness, or how much the degree of abstraction.
I think that is absolutely important point, and that is a point that most of the research results on emotional feelings in anthropology have always also tried to take into account. For example, there is a marvelous book by Jo Kuipers about anger in Indonesia, where anger, we would say, is something that is frightening or so, and anger in Indonesia with former big men or headmen of the village was something that gave them authority. And this anger was absolutely ritualized in very specific and highly complicated ways of speaking. This anger, of course, was something with completely different results and perceptions than if I was angry with your question, for example. Just to give you an example from my experience in the Trobriands, the Trobriand Islanders have a completely different idea with respect to how to treat animals. And we had the dogs who just had puppies, and the Trobriand Islander boys suddenly went out on the reef at low tide and collected big stones. And my wife and I were wondering what was going to happen. And then they looked out a victim, one of these small puppies. And they had a great time, with a lot of laughter, a lot of happiness, to stone this puppy to death. That was happy. They were happy. They were absolutely happy. And we tried not to interfere because, well, it should be their parents, but their parents laughed as well. So these are things that are contextualized in some situations where we would never ever thought of happiness. But that was exactly what we observed. These are hours in field research where you try to get away, to go somewhere else, not to feel responsible for something that you can't justify.
First of all, thank you for your lecture. And my question is that, so based on your observation, so is there any emotion that is encouraged or prohibited in Kilavila? For example, in or like in traditional Chinese culture, possibly men were taught not to express sorrowness. So if this is the case, so how is this kind of encouragement or
prohibitors is representative language?
Yeah, but I answered the question partly to the question I was asked about jealousy. Sorry. There is that unwritten law that youngsters on the Tropical Islands have all kinds of freedom with respect to their sexuality. Really, all kinds of freedom. The only thing they are not supposed to do, or well, there are two things they are not supposed to do. They should not have sexual relationships with boys or girls from the same clan. They should follow the law of exogamy. And the second one is, you must not be jealous. If your girlfriend visited you for 2 weeks and suddenly she realizes, oh well, Tomalala is a handsome young man, maybe I should try him. And it's always the girls, as in real life, that decide whom to visit. Then she goes to Tomalala. And poor Taugaga really wants to kill that guy. It's real name, Taugaga, Batman. Poor Taugaga wants to kill that man, but he knows he can't. Not at all. He can't even give him a beating. He has to endure that the other guy now has a better chance. And he may console himself with the fact that probably this guy has better love magic. So the girl has to do what the love magic says, and she's not really responsible. So these are things where you also learn, and it's very complex, very difficult to follow all these things and be aware of emotions that you are licensed to show and emotions that you are not licensed to show, because it's a taboo way. For example, it would be out of the question, really out of the question in the Tropical Islands, if a man would beat up his woman, his wife. And that is something that happens all the time in the Highlands. But this would be absolutely horrible for any Tropian to realize that a man is beating up his wife. And it would never happen. Oh, it's on again. No. No. Okay. What else?
In Gunter's first lecture last Friday, at the very beginning of the lecture, if you came, do you still remember that what he said? He said, if you look at language, culture, and cognition, you need to choose a conceptual domain. So obviously the conceptual domain of emotion is very difficult, but it's very interesting to understand the relationship between language and culture. Agree?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so any further questions? If not, because after the lecture there's an interaction period, an interaction time between students and Gunter. So students have enough time to raise questions and discuss with him on
whatever.
Whatever. Okay, good. Whatever. So let's thank Gunter for the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
等一下，同学如果就是要参加那个 interaction period， 我们是从4点半到5点半，是在山下的气贤楼的2楼。那我们就请凯玉当 leader。如果你不知道怎么走的话，就跟着他，好他的那边，好不好？可以休息一下，然后就慢慢散步到山下。在外面还有一些草，就休息一下。